the Vancouver Startup Week team, and I'm excited for today's session. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we're grateful to be virtually gathered on Indigenous land, regardless of where you're joining us from. I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. First off, I'd like to thank you for joining us for VSW 2021, and welcome to today's session, Starting a Business and Building the Right Team at the Start of a Pandemic, hosted by our speaker here from, correct me if I say this wrong, In Vancanza Pastificio.
Very close.
Very close.
In Vacanza Pastificio.
There we go, Pastificio. This session is part of the VSW Founder Track and is proudly supported by Sage Accounting. Sage knows you can't start up your business to become, or you didn't start your business to become an accountant. So sorry to any of you accountants watching. Sage Accounting keeps your business organized and running smoothly. Track your cash flow, send out your invoices, and get paid quickly. Visit the Sage Accounting booth to access free guides and templates for starting your business finances right away. Plus, if you head over there during VSW, you get access to an exclusive discount when you're given that you're ready to switch from Excel. Just a note that this session is also part of our VSW experience package, and we're excited to have that for the first time this year. For those of you who have a box, I know I'm one of those, feel free to join in on the interactive portion of this session and share your experience with us on social media by tagging us at Van Startup Week. During the session, if you have any questions for our speaker, please be sure to post them in the Q&A portion on Whova, and I will ask them live to our speaker. I'll now pass the mic over to you, Eryn, and we'll begin the session.
Thank you so much. So again, thank you so much everybody for coming today. I've already been introduced, but I'll introduce myself again. My name is Eryn McKenzie. I'm the founder of In Vancanza Pastificio. The direct translation of that is on vacation past a factory, which I don't really feel like I'm on vacation, but I definitely feel like a pasta factory. We're a stationary food truck located in North Vancouver. It just opened in October of 2020. So by trade, I'm a paralegal full-time. I specialize in corporate commercial law, mergers and acquisitions, and tax planning. But on a backpacking trip to Italy last year, I decided to go two full-time jobs and run a business while also being a paralegal. So last year at the very beginning of COVID, I was going on a backpacking trip through Italy. I left February 28th. A few days before that, I was told COVID had just hit Italy. Everyone told me I should cancel my trip. I made a bunch of phone calls to the government, to my Airbnbs, to all my flight carriers, and everyone told me, you're fine. It's as long as you don't go to these 3 towns, you have no worries. Everything's non-refundable too. So if you do not go, you're not getting any of your money back. So I went to Italy. I flew into Milan and, just go straight to the source of the hotbed of COVID. Flew into Milan and stayed there for a few days. Then from there, backpacked through La Cinque Terre and ended up in Rome. I was supposed to also go to Naples and the Amalfi Coast. Unfortunately, they closed the borders at that point in time, and instead I ended up frantically trying to get home. I won't spend too much time on my time in Italy, but I will say that it did change my life in the most incredible way. While I was there, I was completely blown away by the simple way of life, coupled with the reality that life was really never going to be the same after all of this. And I had just come off a massive deal at work. I was working in mergers and acquisitions at the time, working 72 hours of overtime in a 2-week period. And I was a shell of a human being. So being in Italy really kind of reignited my creativity, made me look at the world in a brighter and more creative lens, and allowed me to actually breathe, and slow the course a bit. So while I was there, there were some things that were open. For the most part, things were closed. Italy is magical. If you haven't been, if you have, you'll know what I mean. In terms of businesses just closed for winter holidays or because it's a Tuesday. And in this case, we noticed that so many businesses were closed just because it was winter, but also because of COVID. So the further south I went, the more businesses were open, but as I was going south, more and more businesses were closing. The wonderful thing about Italy is that what I realized when I was there is that nobody takes anything except food, pasta especially, really great wine, aperitivo, enjoying your life to the fullest, and napping as seriously as I was taking my job, which was a really big reality check for me as a person. I had many people in my life telling me that, you know, you're a very creative person. Why are you wasting your time with law? Which can be creative, but basically I felt as though I was spending all my time making other people rich while I was exhausted. So being immersed in an environment where everyone was just really enjoying life really helped reset me. And in a pandemic, my mom's here as well, by the way. She's right here. She's been instrumental for me in starting my business. So she's joining me today as well. But my mom was in Atlanta at the time. My dad was in the US as well, in Phoenix, and I was away. And I started to really wonder what was actually important in life. If I got sick or my parents got sick, do I actually feel that I had done what I wanted to do? I've always had a very entrepreneurial spirit. This is definitely not my first desire in a business venture, but it's the first one that I've actually taken the jump with. And I think a lot of that has to go back to being in a country where there's a pandemic hitting and you really have to reevaluate your life. So while I was there, I unplugged. I enjoyed life. I ate the most amazing food that I've ever had. It was made from the simplest, freshest ingredients. I drank way too much. I walked around 50 kilometers a day, exploring cities. And one night I was coming home from a cocktail bar and I walked by what was basically a fast food pasta place. And you walked in, beautiful counters with pasta nests and a sign that says, choose your pasta and choose a sauce. So for €5, you got a beautifully made pasta and a beer. So walking home, I'm walking down a cobblestone road, drinking a Moretti beer, eating carbonara, and I thought, wow, this is so much better than eating Megabyte or Fresh Slice at 2 in the morning. This is the after bar food that I would really like to have. So anyone who knows me knows that I have always loved cooking. And when I was growing up in Alberta, I was constantly working in restaurants. I moved to Vancouver. I worked in restaurants as well, just as a way to have that creativity nurtured and fostered. And when I had this experience, I thought, wow, I could bring this back to Vancouver. This would be incredible. So I left Italy, came home and quarantined for 2 weeks. And in my day job, in a very knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic, cut my salary by a quarter the day that I got out of quarantine. So the only nice thing about that was I was also working 25% less. So I began playing with recipes and I began eating more pasta than any one human should ever actually eat, trying to nail down the exact recipe that I wanted. I invested in a $200 countertop pasta extruder by Philips. If you like making pasta at home, highly recommend. Not so great on a large scale, but really good at home. And I bought a $100 motor for my Atlas pasta cutter. And I figured, you know what, if nothing comes out of this, no big deal. But the longer I played with recipes, the more I realized that, like, wow, I'm kind of onto something here. I thought about when I go to a restaurant and buy pasta in Vancouver, it's generally about $20 to $25 for a plate on average. That's a far cry from a €5 pasta and beer combination in Italy. And I know that most places still use dried pasta and not fresh pasta. The beautiful thing about fresh pasta is it cooks in about a minute, while as dried pasta takes about 8 minutes. So it's actually a really wonderful option for fast food. To add fuel to my little entrepreneurship fire, the neighborhood that I live in has really nowhere to eat. And I have very close relationships with the 2 distilleries and cocktail bars in the neighborhood. I know firsthand that they had been looking for a solution for food options on their menu. So I reached out to both of them and ran the idea past them of opening a little pasta cart, and they were super excited about the idea. Their bartenders are freed up to take care of staff. There's an option for people in the neighborhood, and it's affordable and fast. So I guess the question is then, well, why pasta? First of all, it's insanely cheap to make. Pasta is a form of cucina povera, which means poverty food in English. And at the beginning of a recession, that seemed like a really good idea. It's 2 or 3 ingredients: flour, eggs, and water. And it's comforting. And you know, when people are going through hard times, they want comfort food. Pasta is like a big hug in your belly. So in a time like a pandemic, we go back to basics. We want cheap food and we want comfort food. So why not bring that with some traditional sauces back here to Vancouver? When I got back to Canada, there were pasta shortages in stores here. Actually, even in Italy, there were pasta shortages. And the only type of pasta that wasn't sold out in any store was a penne lisce, which is a smooth penne. And apparently the Italians will not even touch that when there is no food left over. So this seemed like a really, really great option. With that, I didn't really know how to start. I looked at commissary spaces, which were quite expensive. And then from there, how do I get the product to the consumer? I don't know. Started looking at food truck options, but your average food truck is about $70,000 to $90,000. But I feel like I had a really wonderful opportunity that this idea happened at the beginning of a pandemic. There were so many people. I'm just looking at Michael's nickname is Spaghetti. I love it. Welcome, Spaghetti. Anyways, there was, at the beginning of the pandemic, there were so many food trucks that couldn't operate their businesses anymore. Most food trucks we found were doing festivals, events, weddings, and all of a sudden everything was canceled. So I was in luck and stumbled across a food truck that was available for rent. And I thought, you know, that's a really great way to start a business. It's a very low risk, low commitment. And if this doesn't work out, I only have it for 6 months and then I can give it back. And if it does work out, then maybe I'll buy it. So went to the Sunshine Coast and picked up a red food truck called the Flavor Saver. With a big mustache on the side and on the hood. Those are gone now, thank God. But it was kitted exactly for what I needed. There's 3 grades of food trucks, and this one happened to be exactly the requirements that I needed. This is where the red tape started. And I'll kind of get into that in the next little bit here. But what I learned in opening a business is that you need to be prepared for things to suck, because they will suck. Then be prepared for setbacks, but you have to limit how far you allow those things to set you back. I'm definitely not advocating in any way for starting a business without a business plan or any type of risk analysis, but just make sure you don't get caught up in thought of, you know, having your own company and the glory that you think is going to come with it without realizing that risk is a reality. Setbacks are going to be a reality. I brought this food truck back to North Vancouver and quickly found out that the district of North Vancouver, not the city of North Vancouver, the district of North Vancouver does not recognize a food truck as a valid business model. The district of North Vancouver basically said the only place I'd be allowed to park it would be in a loading bay of another business. I can't use a parking spot, and I also can't park it on the street. So the original thought was we'd have this at the front of one of the distilleries. that was out. Had to kind of switch gears. And luckily for me, again, back to having really good people and good relationships. I have a friend named Fabio Martini, that's his real name, and yes, he's Italian, who owns a distillery called the Wood Spirit Co. And he's allowed us to park it in his loading bay. Unfortunately, that means the only place I'm allowed to park my food truck is in an alley, which is very confusing to most of our customers, but has strangely worked in my favor in some way or another. And then once that problem got solved, I quickly learned that I wasn't qualified for a business permit because we're not a valid business. So I was granted temporary use permits as a result of the COVID-19 response in allowing patios for businesses in North Van. So that was great until it expired in December. And at that point in time, I had to pull out my inner paralegal and fight city council and say how backwards this was. Luckily for me, two of the councilors are regulars at the food truck. So I had a bit of an in, managed to get through some of the red tape and say, look guys, this is crazy. They agreed. The bylaw was written in 1952 and now we've managed to change it. So after some, and by some I mean a lot of tears and a lot of back and forth and emails and phone calls and begging and pleading, I was finally allowed to have my own business license, and I managed to change the law, which as a paralegal I'm really proud of and I thought was really exciting. So again, if you are thinking of opening a business, please be prepared for it to suck. It's gonna suck. There's lots of victories, but there's a lot of hills along the way. With that said, there is a Warren Buffett quote that is, be greedy when others are fearful. So I worked for a lawyer named Digby Lee. Digby Lee is an amazing man he's a huge proponent for entrepreneurship. And he once told me that the difference between entrepreneurs and everybody else is their willingness to fail, stand up again, dust themselves off, try again, and potentially fail again. Opening a business now versus 2019 when we weren't in a pandemic, is the risk any different? No, I don't really think it is. It's just as risky as before. It's just that now your payoff could be better and the risk is pretty much the same. Failing is failing, whether you're failing in a pandemic or whether you're failing in normal times. Like I mentioned before, I've had a lot of really wonderful ideas for businesses before this one, but I was always too afraid of failing. Or even worse, I was afraid that somebody else had already done my great idea. So how could I possibly be successful at it? If you get stuck in a mindset like that, I'd really like to encourage you to please remember these words, that is absolutely ridiculous and backwards. If you think about it, how many breweries are there in Vancouver? How many restaurants? How many food trucks? How many different insert product here? If you're passionate about your idea, then run with it. And if you believe it to be worth the risk, then it is. You might fail, but it's what separates you from everybody else is your willingness to try and fail and get back up. I recently read a list of the top 100 trends that grew during the COVID pandemic, and pasta is number 13. So, you know, I am ashamed to say this, but I was keto at one point in my life. Never again. Pasta is now like I live, breathe pasta, and it's making a resurgence. So I feel that COVID in many ways has helped launch me into a position where I kind of was able to stomp that fear out, say there's more to life than working, and start a business. So with that said, I would say starting a business in a recession is actually probably the best time, in my opinion. There's a better labor force available from which you're able to source talent, and people are bored and people are hungry. Businesses are more willing to entertain partnerships. I don't know how many breweries you see that now have a food truck parked in front of them all the time, but it's a thing. And other creative arrangements that they wouldn't normally entertain because they're too busy making money or they're focusing on their own growth. This is not to say that either of these things are without their challenge. These two areas have been two of my biggest struggles to date. Capital, it can be more constrained for sure, but it's also more available because there's certain investors who are looking anywhere to put their capital that will show returns and that is less risky than putting it in the stock market. Doesn't mean capital's flowing. It's definitely not, but with certain pockets, it can be more available. It just really depends. I have had several customers who believe so much in my business model. They've come by and asked if I would be willing to partner with them to open a brick and mortar location. I really did not expect that at all. I opened this business on October 3rd. I had a loose idea of what recipes I wanted, but I hadn't barely written them down. I had my food safety plans. I had all my permits. Opened on a whim. And when I opened the front door, I had a line of 15 people and was like, well, hi, we'll see how this is going to go. I'm not really sure. And then I called my mom as my first lifeline and said, I need you to come help me because I can't do this by myself. And for 3 months, she came in 3 nights a week while working a full-time job and just showed up. And that in itself is an investment, right? So you really have to look at what you define as an investment before that being a real struggle. More than that as well, I would say if you're looking and think for things like capital during a pandemic, government grants and entrepreneurial funding are available and they're an incredible place to start. They're also amazing in being able to finesse your business plan and secure capital. I worked very closely with Futurepreneur and also the Women's Enterprise Center. One of these great times where being a woman in business has really paid off for me. And that's been invaluable in allowing me to buy out my truck. I'm in the process of having it rebranded and also rekit it with things that I need for our growth. But the big thing that I want to talk about is finding the right team and how to staff, because that has probably been my biggest challenge in this pandemic. And I think, the biggest challenge of most businesses overall. So before I jump into that, I'm just going to take a quick pause and see if we have any questions or if anybody, any questions or anything like that before we move forward. I don't think so. Okay. So finding the right team. I've always thought of that as staff, right? Especially running a service-based industry. I have to have, my part-time employees, my full-time employees, the prep cook, manager, the whole bit. But sometimes having a right team can also look like software. That can look like QuickBooks Online, Square, or any kind of HR software. It really doesn't have to be a person. With that said, for 3 months, the most important person I had on my team was my mom. And she's seen me through wanting to close this many times and lots of blood, sweat, and tears, quite literally. And after the 3-month mark, I got to the place where working a full-time job and running a business, I really wasn't having fun anymore. And that I could feel in myself, but I started to worry that, that was coming through and to my customers as well. Like, wow, this girl's burnt out. She's exhausted. I don't really know if she wants to be here anymore. And that's when I realized, okay, I really need to hire some people. This isn't sustainable. Luckily for me, at that point in time, I had a business plan in place and I could look at my financials and realize, okay, I can hire a couple people and take a salary myself. So I started off hiring 3 people. I was definitely foolish in my hiring techniques. I was just really excited and I wanted to give everybody an opportunity and hired 3 people. And none of them worked for me anymore, if I'm honest. They all served a wonderful purpose and contributed a lot to our company, but I hadn't really figured out what finding the right team looks like at that point in time. I had one girl who on paper looked amazing. And I was concerned about if it would be a good fit, but on paper looked incredible. And very quickly we began butting heads. I had very set vision, set values for what I wanted this business to be about. And her values and vision did not line up with mine. So we were constantly at odds. In the end, we sat down, talked about it, and we're like, this isn't working. We'll go our separate ways. From there, I started to get a bit frustrated because I was trying really hard to find that team and to not always have to be there. And by that point, the business is growing. I'm understaffed, I'm overworked, and trying to figure out how people do this. This is my first rodeo, so to speak. So I wasn't too sure how to make it work. But I sat down and I wrote an employee manual and decided I don't want there to be any confusion about expectation. And there was, and that's on me. That's totally my fault for not having implemented this right away. But as soon as you write an employee manual, you're able to say, these are our company values. These are the things that are non-negotiable. This is the expectation, and this is what we're about. And it becomes your company mantra in many ways. And it's a really great way to amp people up. And it's a really great tool to use in your hiring practice as well. So as soon as I implemented that, all my problems stopped with staffing. I would hire people, sit down with them, say, these are our company values. This is what we're about. These are the expectations. These are the benefits. What do you think? And I've had people say, not for me. And we go our separate ways. I've had other people say, this sounds great. I want to be a part of it. And I want to help you build this company. And now they're helping me run the show. So I opened in October. It's May 25th today, and I now have 7 employees, which is crazy. But with that, I can tie this back into the pandemic now, also comes its struggles. Hiring during a pandemic, you would think would be one of the best times to hire. And in many ways it is, because you have a very large labor pool from which you're able to pick people. But with that, people are at home getting served, and especially in the service industry. I have had many people who are collecting some form of EI or CERB, and they don't want to work the full-time hours because they are getting that government assistance. So I've found I've had to be more accommodating with that as a result of the pandemic, and have definitely found that to be a struggle. I think probably about 75% of people I've interviewed since the pandemic has started have been on some form of EI or CERB, and don't want to work the full-time hours. They don't want to work more than 20 hours a week, which means that I then have to hire more people so that I have that coverage. And right now, that's the reality. So I'm rolling with it, but it's definitely been a challenge in opening a business during a pandemic. Also on that note is, as a new business, it's been open in the last 6 months. I'm not eligible for a single one of the government assistance programs for COVID relief. So we've kind of been on our own for that. And that also goes back to having a great team. People have been super understanding and happy to help where they can, knowing that all the funds we have are what we're bringing in, or from our loans that we've managed to secure, or most recently we were eligible for the circuit breaker grant. So that's also been a challenge of being a new business during COVID. But it's a bit of a tangent. So back to finding the right team. I would say at the end of the day, the biggest things are, finding people who have the same value system, who support your vision for the company, because at the end of the day, it's yours. And most of all, the thing that I would say is the same thing I love about Italian cooking. And one of the reasons I wanted to open the truck is to focus on simplicity and quality. The best tomato sauce that I've ever had in my life was at a cooking course I took in Italy. Went to a market and bought fresh tomatoes, got fresh olive oil from a local olive grove, fresh garlic and onion and basil, and milled this sauce. It was like 5 ingredients, and it was the most delicious thing that I could probably remember having to date. the more extravagant that we try to make things, including employees and hiring practices, the less effective the final product can be. I experienced that exact same thing with hiring, and promised, try to be the cool boss. It's going to be fun, and I really want people to have fun here, and make it your own, and made all these big promises. But at the end of the day, I had to dial it back down into what was simple and effective, and that was, we're here to do this job. We're all going to have fun, but here's the ground rules. And in doing that, I've managed to attract really quality people who believe in me and believe in my vision and believe in this business. So that's probably the biggest thing I would have to say. Yeah, and here we are. It's been 9 months now, and in that period, we've managed to quintuple our sales, are looking at getting a second location and potentially a brick and mortar. I've had so many people tell me I'm crazy for trying to open a business during a pandemic, but it's probably the best decision that I would ever have made. Does anybody have any questions about opening a business in a pandemic or hiring practices?
I was going to say, I'll jump on. I do have a question that someone's asking. A fun question. What is your favorite pasta and wine combo?
Oh, wine. Oh, and wine combo. Okay.
And wine.
I like that. I love a good Falangina. It's a really beautiful white wine, great variety from Italy. And I realized, I said this last night, that I've become a red sauce girl in my 30s. But more than that, I love aglio e olio. It's probably the simplest and my most favorite pasta. It's so simple: garlic, olive oil, parsley, and chili flakes with linguine, of course. How about you, Leanne? What's yours?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'm a simple, this might be awful, and this is actually what I'm having for dinner tonight: spaghetti and meatballs all the way. Keeping it simple. And then with just a nice glass of red wine.
But how much Parmesan? Is it like the endless?
Definitely not.
Oh, really?
Not the endless, just enough to have like a light dust.
I'm the internet meme was like, more, keep going. More. Yeah.
That's where you just have that like hand crank to make sure that it just keeps going.
Totally.
That's too funny. Well, going back to just running the business, I have another question here. What are some questions that you ask when you're interviewing to make sure that they're the right fit for your team?
It's a good one. I do try to go through our employee manual a little bit and go off of those. One of the questions I always ask people is what their favorite part, or first of all, like what has made them interested in working on a food truck, because it's a very cramped space and you have to really like each other in order to be able to run with it. But more than that, also just what is the most stressful situation that you could recall from the last 6 months of your life? And it varies. Some people are extremely chill, and others, myself included, if I'm honest, are easily overwhelmed by things. And that for me is a really good indicator on how you'll be able to handle the kitchen. That's more on like the actually working there part. But in terms of personality, one thing I always try to emphasize, and it's not really a question, but more like a non-negotiable for me, is that every single person who's working with us, regardless of their experience, regardless of their upbringing, regardless of ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, anything like that, is equally as important as everybody else on the truck. And if anybody like flinches at that or seems to disagree, I just know right away it won't be a good fit, because it is an environment where you can feel very tense at times and maybe irritated with your colleagues, because you're like shoulder to shoulder most of the time. And I have had employees where their frustration has been targeted toward others on the truck, and they're they're not good enough to be here, or they have nothing to offer. And once I started asking that question, it's really, it's really changed. It's really emphasized in one of our values is having respect for all people. Yeah.
Perfect. So another question that I have, mostly because I have the VSW experience box, it came with a recipe card.
Yeah.
Do you have any secret tips to make sure that anyone in the audience who's watching doesn't screw it up? Your foolproof
It's
tricks.
really hard to screw up. Well, first of all, it's a very straightforward recipe, but mince your onions really fine. And don't overcook them. If they get a little bit brown, that flavor will come through. So you just want them slightly translucent. Leave your garlic whole and take it out before you actually blend it up, or use it on your actual noodles, unless you're a big garlic person. But just having the garlic in there whole and cooking will give you enough flavor without overpowering it. Italians actually don't use too much garlic. I learned this while I was there. I was surprised because I was growing up, I was always told that they did. And definitely make sure you add pasta water. Pasta water is the key to any good pasta sauce, and it helps it stick to every noodle.
Perfect. Just taking a look. To anyone that is watching, be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A on the Whova platform. Post your comments in the chat, and then we'll be able to incorporate it as part of today's conversation.
Do you have any questions, Mom? Do I have any questions?
So this is Mom. She just asked me if I have any questions, but one of the things I do want to say is it's been a real privilege to be able to help Eryn during the first few months of her being in business. And one of the biggest things I think that we've experienced is the success of the business is very much about building relationships with your customers. And, you know, we've met many, many wonderful people over the last few months. And, you know, we've established some really good relationships with many of them. And, you know, also advertising the business has become a very, you know, Eryn's been very good about doing it through social media and being able to promote the business through Square and Instagram and, you know, having Google and all of that. And that's been great, but she had some amazing signs created over the last few weeks that we now have at the end of each alley, and at the end of the alley at each entrance. And it's amazing how many people drive by and see that sign and then just turn into the alley, and they've got to find out what's this all about and come to find out about the business and everything else. So you know, the product that you make is important. What you do in your business and the service that you give is very important. But, you know, establishing those relationships and being able to promote your business through many different kinds of social media and other, you know, regular media is really, really important. So, so those are things that I just kind of wanted to add to Eryn's amazing presentation today. So thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Wonderful. It's always great to have a great supporter. I do see another question, but figured it was a great opportunity for you, Eryn. Can you just remind everyone in the room all the different ways that they can, beyond the VSW experience package, get access to your product, order from you, order delivery? Just let everyone know.
So we do at truck service, so we do walk-ups, and then we also have our full menu for sit down on the patios and indoor dining at Sons of Vancouver Distillery and the Wood Spirit Co. Both have amazing cocktails if you enjoy dabbling in those. We are also on Uber Eats and DoorDash, and that's been one of the questions. I think one of the poll questions I had in there was, have you used a third-party delivery app in the last few weeks? Those are sort of a necessary evil for us at the moment, but I mean, I use them when I'm home, so I really can't criticize them too much. But as a business owner, they definitely take a large amount of your profit. And then on top of that, you can order through our website. If you want to make any of our pastas at home, we do meal kits as well. And those we can deliver, or they can be picked up at the truck.
Perfect. So much going on, so many different opportunities. What's next for you?
Definitely the second location, I believe, will be the next step. I am toying with the idea of a brick and mortar location. A lot of people have asked for it in Lower Lonsdale. I think I would do it in Lynn Valley before Lower Lonsdale because, again, there's not much up that way. And then we're also branching out to do dried pastas. So in the experience kit, there are dried pastas. We had to kind of switch gears in order to be able to have an option for the experience kits. But with that, we had a pasta dryer imported from Italy. I've upgraded from my Philips pasta maker to a very large one from Italy as well. So go to the source if you want the good quality for it. But we are looking at getting our dried pastas into local stores here as well. Just working with a food scientist on a longer hold time for them. Right now they're at 3 months, but we're hoping we can get them to be a little bit longer. And then just some branding on that. But hopefully by September, they will be in stores.
That's great to hear. So much in store and so much to look forward to. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. It looks like Charlie had dropped his question in 2 different locations.
Okay.
I was like, we have another question. With that, I guess, do you have any kind of parting words for the group?
I'd love for you guys to come by sometime. We love getting to know our customers. I always say that my goal for the pasta truck is to be our local Cheers. We pride ourselves on knowing all of our customers' names, all their orders. It's been probably my favorite thing by far is getting to know everybody. My mom's scolding my dog. Trying to get to know everybody in the community and building a sense of community in the Lower Lynn neighborhood. So yeah, if you are around, please come by and introduce yourself. We'd love to meet you. I will be there in 3 weeks. I'm actually recovering from surgery at the moment, so I haven't been there as much, but if you come by in the next 3 weeks, I will be. And yeah, we'd just love to meet you guys, buy you a drink.
Perfect. And then with that, I do see a comment from Michael as well. Just asking if you know and I may say this incorrectly, Thalberg chain of coffee shops, specifically Frank Point.
I do. They're wonderful. They make my favorite pain au chocolat.
Wonderful. Well, I'm not sure if this is correct in my assessment, but Michael, I believe, is offering to introduce you to them.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. So what would be the best way? Shall I have Michael?
Yeah, you can email me. My contact info should be on the website, and there's also there's a contact us feed there as well, or simply it's just eryn@invacanza.ca.
Perfect. Well, hopefully you'll be able to see that introduction soon and maybe add something else to the what's next for the organization.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Thank you, Michael.
Wonderful. And he said he's going to email you via the website. So that is great to see.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Well, with that, just wanted to double check before we wrap today's conversation. Eryn, do you have any last bits of feedback, any golden nuggets for anyone who is looking to start their business, a second business or second job as you have while they're thinking it through?
Yeah, definitely make sure you make time for yourself and be able to unplug. My joke for the last few months has been when people say, you know, what does In Vancanza mean? I'm like, that means on vacation, which is the opposite of how I feel all the time, which is true. But one of the reasons I called the company In Vancanza was obviously I was on vacation, but more importantly than that, I love how people have like a freedom in what they eat and enjoy their food so much while they are on vacation. And I kind of wanted to bring that sort of feeling into our food back in Vancouver. Eat like you're on vacation is our slogan. Don't worry about it, just enjoy it. But with that said, opening a business, you will not have a vacation for a while, and it's incredibly important to unplug. My shortfall has definitely been in being too available all the time. I am constantly on my phone. I am constantly responding to emails. I'm constantly behind on everything, especially while transitioning from the full-time day job. And yeah, so with that, I would definitely say if it is something that you're passionate about, 100% do it. Write a business plan, write your cash flow projections, and make time for yourself, because you will need that reprieve, and burnout is real for sure.
Perfect. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining this session.